Phil Collins built his career behind the drums. For 50 years, those hands created magic. But in 2024, something devastating happened. The 74-year-old legend can no longer hold drumsticks. His latest health update shocked the music world. It started during a routine checkup. Doctors found something they didn't expect. Now, the man who gave us "In the Air Tonight" sits in silence. His hands shake uncontrollably. The nerve damage is worse than anyone knew. What the doctors discovered will break your heart. Phil Collins was born on January 30th, 1951, in Putney Hospital in southwest London. The city still carried the scars of World War II. Bombed streets were being rebuilt, and rationing would not fully end until 1954, so his family lived in a steady mix of hope and hardship. His father, Greville, had survived the war as a paratrooper. His mother, June, first worked in a toy shop and later became a theatrical agent for kids. Their small Wandsworth home always felt busy, always felt creative, even when money was tight. Phil was the youngest of three. Clive loved drawing and would grow up to become a cartoonist. Carol dreamed of ice skating. Phil was the one who could not sit still. At age 5, he began tapping rhythms on biscuit tins, turning the kitchen into his own tiny studio. Every sound in the house became a drum. Every beat felt like the start of something he could not yet name. His early school years were filled with this restless spark. At Nelson Primary School, he was the kid who always wanted to perform, the kid who made noise in every class, the kid teachers struggled to contain. When he moved to Chiswick County Grammar School, he formed his first band, The Real Thing, and even brought in his future wife, Andrea Bertarelli, as a backup singer. They played basic garage rock using a cheap drum kit his family had saved to buy. At the same time, he played football, rehearsed band songs, and watched his mother bring home stories from theatrical auditions at the Barbara Speakey Stage School. June even sent him to small modeling jobs, and by age 10, he was posing for fashion magazines. His father, who worked as an insurance agent, tried to keep the household calm, but the pull of the performing world kept growing stronger around Phil. Then came the moment that changed everything. At 14, he shocked his family and friends by leaving regular school altogether. Instead of A-levels and the usual path toward university, he enrolled full-time at the Barbara Speake Stage School. It was a risky move for any kid in the 1960s. Everyone knew show business could collapse without warning. Still, he wanted it. He had already tasted applause. In 1963, he won a talent show at a holiday camp by performing Elvis covers on drums. He had been teased for loving music more than formal education, but he could not go back. Giving up school meant cutting off all backup plans and walking straight into uncertainty. The leap was frightening, but it was also the first real choice he made for himself. Not long after, he found himself around one of the biggest storms in music history. At just 13, he was one of roughly 350 extras hired for the Beatles' film A Hard Day's Night. The shoot at the Scala Theatre on March 31, 1964, was so loud that he could barely hear himself think. He did not get paid. He did not get a speaking role. His shots were cut because he was not screaming excited enough. But he had stood in the center of Beatlemania, surrounded by a wall of sound and flashing lights. It was a tiny moment, yet it stayed with him. That same year, he stepped into the West End as the Artful Dodger in Oliver. From 1964 to 1965, he performed 8 shows a week at the New Theatre, earning £15 a week and working harder than most adults. His voice broke while he was still on stage, forcing him to speak instead of sing, but he refused to quit. The long nights, the fast costume changes, the pressure of stepping into the brightest spotlight in London all pushed him further. He was learning discipline long before he ever joined a rock band. He also acted in Cadbury ads and appeared in the 1967 children's film Calamity the Cow. He played the young collector, spent long days outdoors wrangling animals, argued with directors, and learned how cruel older actors could be to a kid. He hated the process. He felt trapped in the same cheeky troublemaker roles. By his late teens, he had taken more than 20 acting parts, but he felt no joy in them anymore. His audition for the musical Fanny Hill in 1968 was the final blow. He failed to get the role, and something inside him clicked. Enough. He wanted out of acting for good. At 12, he had already played drums with the Carl Denver Trio in smoky clubs where adults treated him like cheap labor. They often paid him nothing. They made him stay late into the night when he should have been home asleep. It was his first lesson in how unfair the music business could be. But he also felt something stronger than frustration. He felt freedom when he played. Real freedom that acting never gave him. By 1967, he joined Hickory Wind and began earning £5 a night, which would be around £90 today. The pubs were smoky, the pay was low, but the music mattered. He met Andrea Bertorelli through the band and fell quietly in love. They recorded their first single, Green Light and the Key, in a simple CBS session that same year. The rooms were cramped, the equipment basic, but for Phil it felt like stepping into his future. Then came Flaming Youth. In 1968, he and guitarist Ronnie Carroll formed the band, and together they recorded the concept album Arc 2. Inspired by the 1969 moon landing, the album told the story of Earth being evacuated into space. It was bold, strange, and far ahead of its time. Reviews were kind. Sales were a disaster. Only about 150 copies sold. The band fell apart soon after. It hurt, but it also pushed him toward the next door. In 1969, he auditioned for Blind Faith, the new supergroup with Eric Clapton and Steve Winwood. He was 18, and sure this was his moment. They told him he was too young. He walked away crushed. Later that year, he played on early sessions for George Harrison's All Things Must Pass, only to discover that his parts for Art of Dying never made it into the final release. Years later, Harrison even sent him a prank tape of the session. Phil took the joke well, but the disappointment stuck. By 1975, he was experimenting with jazz fusion in the band Brand X. They improvised wild, complex rhythms and spent nights at clubs like the Roxy, where in 1979 he took part in a 3-night, 6-set marathon. Some of it was captured on rare tapes that fans still hunt for. The music was never meant for charts. It stretched him in new ways and sharpened his craft. He almost lost everything once in 1969 when a faulty electrical setup set the Hickory Wind stage on fire. Smoke poured through the club. People panicked. Phil kept drumming until the last possible moment because the rhythm felt like the only solid thing in the room. They evacuated just in time. Promoters grew wary of booking them afterward, but Phil walked away with a deeper sense of who he was. Someone who would keep going, even when the world felt like it was burning. By 1970, the same year he married Andrea Bertorelli at 19 after a rushed elopement, he adopted her daughter Joely and tried to build a stable life while still scraping by. The marriage would fall apart by 1980, but at the time it felt like another bold leap. He had been leaping his whole life anyway. From biscuit tins to West End lights, from failed auditions to cosmic rock albums that sold 150 copies, from smoky clubs to brushes with Beatles history. Every choice pulled him forward. Every mistake pushed him toward the drum kit that would carry him into Genesis and then far beyond. Phil Collins was just 19 when he spotted a tiny ad in Melody Maker in August 1970 asking for a drummer sensitive to acoustic music. It felt like something was calling him. He grabbed his friend Ronnie Carroll, jumped into a car, and drove straight to Peter Gabriel's parents' house in Surrey. The audition took place beside a swimming pool. Gabriel later said that the moment Collins sat on the stool, he already knew he was the right one. Collins didn't just play well, he sat down, sight read, looking for the room, and hit it clean on the first try. Dozens of drummers had tried before him, but he walked away with the spot. His father wanted him in an office job, but Collins had already made up his mind. He joined Genesis officially on August 4, 1970, and within weeks was rehearsing at Farnham Maltings. The band had been unstable for years, but with Collins's sharp timing and energetic drive, they began to shift toward the sound that would define their rise. By November 1971, they released Nursery Crime, Collins's first album with Genesis. It didn't chart in the UK at first, but places like Italy embraced it quickly. The album introduced both Collins and guitarist Steve Hackett, and the musical box became a fan favorite. Collins carried the song's twists with precise drumming and a sense of drama that pushed the band forward. For Absent Friends even gave him his first lead vocal, a small hint of what was waiting in the future. Genesis had finally found a stable core, and Collins' playing became the force that held their growing sound together. Then came Foxtrot in 1972. It asked everything from him. Supper's Ready stretched 23 minutes, filled with strange rhythms and sudden turns. Gabriel wore fox masks and costumes on stage, sometimes even leaning on Collins's bass drum like it was a hiding place. Collins locked the band together with odd signatures like 9/8, as if they were completely natural. The rhythm section he built with Mike Rutherford became one of the strongest in progressive rock, and Foxtrot pushed Genesis into new territory. In 1974, the band tried something even bigger with The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, a massive double album recorded while the band lived in a rat-infested house. Gabriel worked on lyrics in one room, while Collins jammed with the rest in another. Collins had to multi-track vocals to help shape the album's storytelling. Fly on a Windshield and other tracks showed how well he could blend atmosphere with power. The live shows lasted more than 90 minutes and drained everyone. Collins later said, "The Lamb should have been one album, but its wild ambition changed the band forever." Then everything shifted in August 1975, when Gabriel left. Genesis auditioned hundreds of singers. None worked. During rehearsals for The Carpet Crawlers, Collins tried guiding the applicants by singing the parts himself. Slowly, the band realized the voice they needed was already sitting behind the drums. Fans didn't know at first, but Genesis chose him as the new lead singer. A Trick of the Tail came out the next year, 1976, and hit number 3 in the UK and 31 in the US. Collins stepped forward without the theatrical masks, bringing a conversational charm that younger crowds connected with immediately. The US tour, with Bill Bruford on extra drums, helped push Genesis deeper into the American mainstream. As Genesis grew, Collins kept exploring. In 1976, he recorded Unorthodox Behavior with Brand X, a jazz fusion group. The album reached number 191 on the Billboard 200. Tracks like Malaga Virgen and Nuclear Burn showed his fast, improvisational style. Brand X gave him freedom to stretch out, even if it caused scheduling headaches. It proved he could live in more than one musical world at the same time. Genesis kept evolving with him. On Wind and Wuthering in 1977, Mike Rutherford wrote Your Own Special Way about his wife Andrea. Released on February 4, 1977, it reached number 62 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and became Genesis's first American charting single. Its gentle sound showed the band moving toward something warmer. It eased old tensions and gave them room to experiment with simpler melodies. By 1978, they were ready for a true breakthrough. And then there were three arrived with Follow You, Follow Me. Rutherford wrote it in 10 minutes. Released in February 1978, it hit number 7 in the UK and number 23 in the US. For the first time, Genesis had a global hit that didn't rely on long prog pieces. Collins sang lead and played drums, proving he had fully grown into both roles. But the year wasn't easy for him. On tour in 1978, he pushed through severe vocal strain from rehearsing Abacab. Fans noticed him using throat spray in the middle of shows. 8 months of touring drained him. He kept the struggle quiet, but the warning signs were already forming. The pressure of singing and drumming every night carried a cost. Everything at home was breaking too. In 1978, he moved to Vancouver with his wife Andrea, hoping to save their marriage. Instead, the distance pushed them apart. She met someone else back in her hometown. By April 1979, she had left for her mother's house and taken their children with her. The divorce became final in 1981. The pain went into his music. Misunderstanding on the 1980 album Duke held the weight of that hurt and marked the start of the honest, emotional style that would define his solo career. Despite the turmoil, Collins kept exploring new paths. In 1978, he formed the Phil Collins Big Band and played the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland. The performance blended jazz roots with rock energy and later showed up as a bonus track on a live DVD. It proved once again that Collins's musical world stretched far beyond one band or one genre. By 1983, Genesis released their self-titled album known as Mama. The song Mama hit number 1 in the UK. Collins programmed the drum machines himself, creating a tense, industrial edge. The Mama tour between 1983 and 1984 used heavy pyrotechnics. Explosions during the performances injured several crew members and forced safety reviews. Still, the tour sold out arenas, and the 1985 concert film Genesis Lived the Mama Tour captured the band at a new creative peak. Then came Invisible Touch in 1986. It became the band's best-selling album ever. More than 21 million copies sold worldwide, including 6 million in the US. The title track hit number 1 in the US. Collins directed the surreal video, which cost about $500,000 to make, enormous for the time. The world tour covered 121 dates across North America, Europe, and Japan, earning tens of millions and sending Genesis into stadium-level fame. In July 1987, they played 4 sold-out nights at Wembley Stadium. More than 288,000 tickets were sold. The shows became one of the decade's biggest live events, and the recording sold more than 4 million copies. Collins admitted the puppet visuals in Land of Confusion strained his voice, but the scale of those nights pushed the band into rock history. During that era, he also worked with Eric Clapton on the 1986 album August. He produced and drummed while hiding a growing numbness in his hands from spinal wear caused by years of drumming. He performed through pain without letting fans know, holding everything together even as his body resisted. By 1987, the backlash arrived. He was everywhere on radio and MTV. Songs like Susudio and In the Air Tonight played non-stop. Critics called him the most annoying pop star of the decade. Collins joked he heard his songs more on radio than he played them himself. Even with the criticism, he won 3 Grammys in 1987. His success made him a target, something he recognized and learned to live with. Then came the We Can't Dance Tour in 1991. It featured hydraulic drum risers lifting his kit high into the air during solos. The tour covered more than 100 shows across 3 continents. It looked spectacular, but the strain came back. During rehearsals for No Son of Mine, his voice cracked after more than 100 shows. The pressure of being both frontman and drummer pushed him to the edge again. The tour cemented Genesis as stadium giants, but it also carried the shadow of his health struggles that would later force him to step back. Phil Collins stepped into his solo career carrying a heart full of pain and a mind full of ideas. And somehow, that mix turned into a wave of music that no one could ignore. His first album, Face Value, came out on February the 13th, 1981, and it felt like someone had opened the door to everything he had been hiding. He recorded most of it at home in Shalford in Surrey, staring at his little 8-track machine with a Prophet 5 nearby and a Roland CR78 guiding the rhythm. He was going through a brutal divorce, and every emotion slipped into the songs without him trying to hide it. In the Air Tonight came out of that storm in one take with no reverb, no edits, and no second-guessing. The drum break that crashes in the middle was born from that same anger and became one of the most famous moments in 1980s music. He pulled in the Phoenix horns for Fire and El Shankar for a strange, beautiful edge. And somehow, that mix of tears and invention created an album that sold more than 25 million copies and set the tone for the decade. A year later, he came back with another burst of raw feeling. Hello, I Must Be Going arrived on November 5th, 1982, and he sounded sharper and angrier than before. One song held all that fury, I Don't Care Anymore. A heavy, bitter track made even harder because he taped drumsticks to his hands to push through early nerve pain. The album felt smaller and closer because he kept the team tight. Mostly John Giblin on bass and Daryl Stuermer on guitar, while Collins handled most of the rest himself. It worked. The song hit the charts, and fans felt the honesty in every line. It showed that he could take pain and turn it into something powerful without losing control of the feeling underneath. Then came the moment when everything lifted. No Jacket Required landed on February 18th, 1985, and the whole world started paying attention. He filled the album with songs that stuck to you one more night, Susudio, Take Me Home, and he brought in players who gave the music a clean, bright edge. Leland Sklar shaped the low end while David Frank built the groove that carried Susudio. The album sat on top of the Billboard charts for 7 weeks and 5 weeks in the UK, pulled in 3 Grammys, including Album of the Year in 1986, went 12 times platinum in the US, and sold more than 25 million copies around the world. That same year, he stood at Live Aid and played in London, then raced onto the Concorde and played again in Philadelphia for more than 1 billion people watching. It became one of the wildest charity stunts in music and pushed him into a level of fame he had never imagined. His success stretched past albums into movies. In 1984, he wrote Against All Odds for a film of the same name. He had written it in one night, carrying the weight of lost love from both the movie and his own life. The song hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 3 weeks and earned him an Academy Award nomination along with a Grammy. During the film work, he even argued with director Taylor Hackford to make sure the song lived at the center of the story, and he won that fight. The song became one of the defining heartbreak anthems of the decade. By the mid-1980s, he was everywhere. Live Aid in 1985 turned into the biggest physical test of his life. He played in London, sprinted to the Concorde, and flew to Philadelphia to drum for a Led Zeppelin reunion. The lack of rest and the stress pushed his nerves to the limit, and he later said the drumming that night felt like the hardest he had ever done. The performances were watched by about 1.9 billion people around the world and cemented his place as a global figure who would push himself even when his body begged for a break. Then, in 1989, he poured his attention into something different. But Seriously came out with Another Day in Paradise leading the way, a song about homelessness that hit #1 in 16 countries. David Crosby joined him on the track, and the message reached radios everywhere. The song won a Grammy even as lawsuits tried to pull it apart, accusing him of borrowing melodies from older material. He kept insisting the melody was his, and the attention only made the message louder. It became one of the most meaningful songs he ever released and stayed part of every conversation about social issues in music. His career moved into acting with Buster in 1988. He played Buster Edwards from The Real Great Train Robbery of 1963. The film did well at the box office, but the backlash was immediate. Politicians and critics said it softened a violent crime that had injured a train driver and outraged the public. Even Prince Charles and Princess Diana avoided the premiere. Collins defended himself, saying he wanted to show Edwards as a human being. But the controversy stayed with him. In 1999, he walked into a different world by voicing Turk in Tarzan and writing the soundtrack. He recorded 9 songs in 5 languages, and You'll Be in My Heart became a sweeping hit. He won the Oscar, the Golden Globe, and the Grammy. Behind the magic, he was fighting painful custody battles, but recording the songs helped him stay close to his children. His daughter Lily later shared that the song began as a lullaby he wrote for her long before Disney turned it into an anthem. His work with Tears for Fears added another chapter. In 1989, he helped produce The Seeds of Love and played drums on Woman in Chains. The sessions dragged on for nearly 3 years, full of arguments between Roland Orzabal and Kurt Smith. Collins often stepped in as the calm voice in the room, helping keep the music moving when tempers rose. The album later earned praise that made the long struggle worth it. He even directed the music video for Do You Remember in 1990, spending $1 million to build a story about regret and a father who misses years of his son's life because of war. Collins used memories of his own divorces to shape the emotion. The mix of color and black and white scenes built a quiet sadness that stayed with fans long after the video aired. Through the 1990s, he faced another wave of trouble. He moved from the UK to Switzerland to reduce taxes after selling more than 100 million records. The British press slammed him and called him a traitor. Critics said he preached compassion with Another Day in Paradise while avoiding taxes. He pushed back, insisting everything he did was legal, but the criticism followed him for years. In 1996, he shifted gears again and formed the Phil Collins Big Band. It became an 18-piece jazz group that performed arrangements of his biggest hits without vocals. He drummed with Pure Swing in a Paris jazz festival and recorded A Hot Night in Paris with musicians like George Duke and James Carter. It reminded fans that beneath all the pop success lived a jazz drummer who had loved the music since childhood. Behind the fame, his personal life kept unraveling. His first marriage to Andrea Bertorelli in 1975 ended with a court ordering him to pay £17 million in 1980, the most expensive divorce in the UK at that time. His second marriage to Jill Tavelman began in 1984 and ended in 1996 with another settlement of £17 million after an affair became public in 1992. Their daughter Lily was just 5 at the time, and later wrote about the deep emotional wounds she carried. His third marriage to Oriane Sevi in 1999 ended in 2008 with more than $30 million in alimony and long legal battles that followed them into U.S. and Swiss courts. Oriane claimed ownership rights over a mansion worth about $40 million, and her final $20 million claim was dismissed only in 2022. At one point, Collins said the situation felt like an armed occupation of his own home. His family story grew more complicated when Jolie Collins, whom he had adopted in 1975, and Lily Collins both spoke openly about the emotional distance they felt from him. Lily described feeling abandoned and disconnected, only finding peace many years later when she forgave him. His eldest son, Simon, followed him into drumming, but their relationship was strained by constant paparazzi attention and custody battles in 2008. The worst blow came when his body finally gave out. During the Genesis reunion tour in 2007, he suffered a spinal dislocation that caused nerve damage in his hands and arms. By 2009, he needed a surgery to rebuild parts of his neck and relieve pressure on the spinal cord. After the operation, he could barely hold drumsticks and sometimes tape them to his hands to keep going. Doctors warned he might never drum again, and those words changed the way he saw everything. In 2017, he stepped into retirement after more surgeries, including a neck fusion in 2015 and a back operation in 2016 that left him with drop foot. He walked with a cane and fell so badly in 2018 that he needed stitches before a show. When Genesis reunited for one last tour in 2021 and 2022, he sat on stage at the O2 Arena in London, while his son Nick played the drums for him. At 71, he looked frail, but kept singing and even joked with the crowd about needing a real job when it was all over. That night closed a journey that had lasted 52 years and showed a career that had changed music, survived storms, and ended with the quiet strength of a man who gave everything he had until his body simply could not give more.